Imagine yourself in this scenario. You or one of your family members will say your grandfather or grandmother is very sick, has been sick for a while, and you know that there's nothing that's necessarily going to reverse this health issue that they're dealing with. One night, their condition becomes particularly aggravated, so they're rushed to the hospital. And as part of that, you're in the ICU, you're waiting to hear from a doctor. You've been speaking with doctors all day. A nurse pops in to say that the doctor will be doing his or her rounds in just a few minutes and that you can expect them to come in. And the next thing that happens is a robot with a monitor on top rolls into your room. And the doctor on that monitor lets you and your family member know that the end is near. There's nothing left that can be done except put your grandfather or grandmother on to palliative care, essentially give them morphine to keep them comfortable until their inevitable passing. This is a really controversial issue and one that just happened actually a couple of days ago on March 9th. So this is a real scenario that took place out in San Francisco. An elderly grandfather had chronic lung disease, was unable to breathe one night, was rushed to the hospital. And so now the medical world is sort of lit up with a conversation about this new development in medicine and some of the things that are becoming possible for better or for worse. So we'll talk about this a little bit today, just as a potential kind of ethical dilemma that you can think of through the lenses of things like MMI, Casper, or even things like secondary essays as part of your application. Before I get into that, hi, my name is Dr. Sarah Klebe, and I'm an admissions expert with BeMo. So this is a question about the future of medicine. These kinds of technological options or telehealth type options are becoming increasingly available. In many ways, they're very positive potential developments. And as in any contentious situation like this, there are pros and cons to consider. And it's worth sort of stepping back, I think, and asking questions, not just about this specific experience or the specific event, but if this is sort of the future of medicine, where medicine is going for better or worse. So just very quickly, some details from this particular story. The granddaughter, or the daughter who went with her father to the hospital was very upset about this particular exchange, saying that, if it's just normal news, that's fine. But if you're coming to tell us that this person who has chronic lung disease really has no lung left to work with, and they want to put you on a morphine drip until you die, but that, she says, should be done by a human being face to face, not by a machine. On the other hand, the hospital is defending its use of this kind of technology, saying they have a policy that a nurse or doctor is supposed to be present in the room during the time of those technological consultations, and claiming that this was actually a follow-up visit to earlier physician visits, and this was not the initial mode of delivery for the diagnosis. The daughter is still quite upset, saying that, they figured this was just going to be a routine check-in, and was quite astonished by what the doctor ended up saying. And then there were some difficulties in actually just communicating the information because of, hearing loss and things like that. So a very difficult situation, regardless of which side you sort of are on, or if you're kind of in between those two things. On the one hand, there are pros to this kind of technology. Doctors are overworked and spread thin. This isn't a secret. And these kinds of technological options offer lots of possibilities that weren't there before for doctors to simply connect with more patients. As well, it can be a really cost-effective use of resources, allowing doctors to take part in a number of different medical procedures, interviews, discussions, etc., all from one particular location, not having to travel all around. It provides access to those doctors when they can't be physically present. So that's a potential really positive thing for expanding the amount of access that patients do have towards their doctors. And if we look at technology in general, this does seem to be the direction in which our technologies are heading, more and more remote options. But of course, there are some things that are lost for not having that direct human contact and conversation. And that's sort of where a lot of the cons on this particular issue fall. The idea that it's very difficult to have, say, a strong patient-physician relationship if that relationship isn't able to be fostered by sharing space. In some ways, it's an aspect, I think, of patient-centered medicine in terms of that ease of access, but at the same time, that patient-centered discussion also necessarily has room in it for discussions of how effectively compassion, empathy, or even just sympathy can be communicated remotely, as opposed to that sharing of space. So this isn't really an issue with any easy answers, but it's absolutely one to be aware of if you are in the middle of applying for med school, for example, and you know you're going to have to do interviews or MMIs or CASPA or anything like that. These kinds of hot topics from the headlines do tend to come in during those evaluations. And as well as a future medical professional, staying on top of what kinds of technological developments are in process and what the arguments are on either side look like. These are all things that you're going to need to take in mind because, of course, the practice of medicine isn't stagnant. It hasn't stopped. It's not done right now. And we know that what we're doing now is exactly what we're going to be doing 100 years from now. No. Medicine 100 years from now is going to be probably quite as different as medicine was 100 years ago. And so really being able to understand and balance those pros and cons, regardless of which side of the sort of discussion you fall on, it's an incredibly important thing to start refining early in your career so that you're able to start pulling those ways of thinking into your simple everyday evaluations of situations and interactions with others, thinking through what is gained and what is potentially lost through these new kinds of developments. We'll probably end up with something somewhere in the middle. Hopefully a good balance can be struck. But in the meantime, I thought this was a really interesting and challenging ethical issue from the headlines to bring in and open up to you for conversation. So what do you think? Is this where the future of medicine is headed? Is this where it should be headed? Why do you think so? Feel free to engage in some conversation in the comments. I'd love to participate in that conversation with you and hear what you think as people who are either at the beginning of or working towards a career in medicine or education in medicine. I'm always interested to hear what students have to say and how they weigh in on these really complicated, weighty issues. So I hope that you enjoyed this video and that it was helpful or at least interesting. If so, please do go ahead, like it, share it with a friend who might benefit from it or be interested by the ideas. For more great content like this, click the link that should appear either above or below this video and head on over to YouTube so you can subscribe to our channel. You want to make sure that you never miss out on important tips, challenging ideas, and other useful content that we offer every single day to help you reach your goals. As ever, thank you so very much for your time. Take good care, and I'll see you next time.